A room filled with tension, not the loud kind, not the kind you can easily see, but the quiet kind, where every second feels longer than it should. A group of people sit together, not speaking much, not because they have nothing to say, but because saying the wrong thing could change everything. Outside, the world is not calm. There is unrest, confusion, a sense that something has already gone wrong and may not be fixed easily. Inside that room, there is only one question. How do you leave when leaving is no longer possible? No clear path, no safe exit, no simple solution, just fear, carefully controlled. And then an idea appears. Not strong at first, not convincing. In fact, it sounds strange, almost unbelievable. What if the way out is not through force, not through speed, but through a story so detailed, so carefully shaped, that it begins to feel real? A plan that does not fight danger, but walks quietly beside it. Imagine pretending to be something you are not for a moment, but long enough to survive. Imagine stepping into a role where one mistake could reveal everything. The idea grows, slowly, carefully. People begin to listen, not because they fully believe it, but because there is nothing else left. And sometimes, when all real options disappear, the unreal becomes the only chance. But here's where it becomes even more interesting. Because this is not just imagination, it is built step by step. Details are added, names are created, identities are formed, a world is designed, not for entertainment, but for escape. And the more this plan develops, the more it begins to feel possible. Still risky, still uncertain, but possible. And that small difference changes everything. The people involved are not heroes in the usual sense. They are careful, focused, aware that this is not about bravery alone, but precision. Every move must be right, every word must fit, every moment must feel natural. Because if it doesn't, the entire illusion breaks. And when illusion breaks, reality returns. And reality in this situation is not forgiving. As the plan moves closer to action, the tension rises, not loudly, but deeply, because now it is no longer an idea. It is happening. And once it begins, there is no turning back. This is not a story about action alone. It is about intelligence, about timing, about creating something believable enough to change fate. And just when you think you understand what is happening, you realize something even more powerful. This actually happened. This is not just imagination. This is a real plan, a real risk, a real escape built on something that should never have worked. And yet, it did. This is Argo. A story like this does not move forward with noise. It moves with precision, with people who understand that one wrong step is not just a mistake, it is exposure. At the center stands Tony Mendez, portrayed by Ben Affleck. He is not introduced as a loud hero. There is no rush in his presence. He is calm, observant, and deeply focused. What makes him attractive as a character is not strength in the usual sense. It is control. He thinks before he acts. He watches before he speaks. And when he finally decides, it feels certain. Affleck plays him with quiet confidence, making every decision feel important without exaggeration. Around him are the 6 Americans he must help escape. They are not soldiers. They are ordinary individuals placed into an extraordinary situation. Their fear is real but controlled. Their hope is fragile but present. Each one carries a different response. Some more cautious, some more doubtful, some slowly beginning to believe. And that balance makes the tension feel alive. Then comes John Chambers, played by John Goodman. His presence brings something unexpected, a mix of humor and realism. He represents the creative side of the plan, the idea that illusion, if done well, can become believable. Goodman's performance feels natural, adding warmth to a story that could otherwise feel too heavy. Alongside him is Lester Siegel, portrayed by Alan Arkin. He carries experience, a sense of knowing how things work behind the scenes. His character adds depth, showing that even in serious situations, creativity and confidence can shape outcomes. Arkin brings a sharp, memorable energy that stays with the viewer. Behind all of this stands Ben Affleck again, not just as the lead actor, but as the director. His direction is controlled and thoughtful. He does not rush the story. He builds it slowly, allowing tension to grow naturally. Every scene feels placed with purpose. Every moment feels like it matters. The film was produced by George Clooney, Grant Heslov, and Ben Affleck himself. Their combined effort ensured that the film maintained both realism and strong storytelling, balancing fact with cinematic experience. Argo was released in 2012, and from the beginning, it felt different. Not because it was loud, but because it was grounded. It carried a sense of truth that made every moment feel closer, more personal, more intense. The characters are not larger than life. They are real, careful, thoughtful, human. And that is what makes their journey so engaging. Because when ordinary people face extraordinary situations, every decision feels important. The story begins in a moment where control has already been lost. In Tehran, tension rises quickly. What starts as protest turns into something much more serious. Crowds gather, voices grow louder, and soon the situation moves beyond control. The American embassy is no longer safe. People rush. Decisions are made in seconds. Some escape, some do not. And in the middle of that chaos, 6 Americans manage to slip away. Not through planning, but through chance. They find shelter in the home of the Canadian ambassador, safe, but only for a moment, because safety here is temporary. They cannot stay hidden forever. And if they are found, there will be no second chance. Far away in the United States, the problem becomes clear. 6 people are alive, but trapped. And the question is simple, yet impossible. How do you bring them home? Many ideas are suggested. Some feel too direct. Some feel too dangerous. Some simply will not work. Until one idea appears. Unusual, strange, almost unbelievable. Tony Mendez, played by Ben Affleck, suggests something different. Not force, not speed, but illusion. The plan is simple in words, but complex in execution. Create a fake film production, turn the 6 Americans into a film crew, give them identities, roles, purpose, and walk them out as if they belong there. At first it sounds impossible, even unrealistic, but the more it is explored, the more it begins to feel possible. Because in a world filled with confusion, a confident story can pass as truth. Mendez travels to Hollywood, not for entertainment, but for survival. There he meets John Chambers, played by John Goodman, and Lester Siegel, portrayed by Alan Arkin. Together they build the illusion, a fake movie, a script, posters, meetings, everything needed to make it look real, not just to others, but to anyone who might question it. The film is given a name, a presence, a story strong enough to exist, even if it never will. And slowly, the plan takes shape. Meanwhile, in Tehran, the tension grows. The 6 Americans live carefully, quietly. Every sound feels louder. Every knock feels dangerous. They wait, not knowing if the plan will work or if it will arrive too late. Finally, the moment comes. Mendez enters Iran, calm, focused, carrying a story that must not break. He meets the group, explains the plan, that gives them new identities, new names, new roles. At first there is doubt, fear, because this is not just acting, this is survival. But there is no other choice. They begin to prepare, practice their stories, understand their roles, learn to appear natural, even under pressure. Outside, the situation remains tense. Authorities search, faces are checked, questions are asked, and time feels shorter. Then comes the day, the escape. They move toward the airport, step by step, calm on the outside, uncertain inside. Every checkpoint matters. Every glance feels important. One mistake, and everything ends. Documents are checked. Questions are asked. There are moments where everything feels like it might stop. Moments where silence feels too long, but the story holds. The identities remain strong. The illusion does not break. They move forward, closer to the final point, the airplane, the last step, the last test. And even here, tension does not disappear, it grows. Because the closer you get to freedom, the more everything feels at risk. But then, something shifts. The final approval, the final movement, and suddenly, they're on the plane, not safe yet, but moving, leaving the ground, slowly, carefully, until finally, they are out of danger, out of fear, out of a place that almost held them forever. The plan worked not because it was perfect, but because it was believed. And that is what makes the story powerful. It was not strength that saved them. It was intelligence, creativity, and the courage to trust something that should not have worked. A fake story became the only real way out. And in the end, it became real enough to change everything. From the moment Argo was released, it drew attention beyond just its thrilling narrative. The film's depiction of events in Iran became a source of tension and debate. While audiences in many countries admired the daring and ingenuity of the operation, others questioned the representation, the perspective, and the framing of history. Iran, in particular, found the film deeply controversial. It was banned outright, as authorities considered it an inaccurate portrayal of the 1979 hostage crisis, painting the country's people and government in a negative light. The government expressed concern that the film could reinforce stereotypes about Iranians and inflame anti-Iranian sentiment globally. Critics in Iran argued that the narrative favored Western perspectives and overlooked the complexity of the political situation. They saw it as Hollywood creating heroes out of foreign intervention, simplifying a delicate and traumatic historical event. The ban was strictly enforced. Theaters were prohibited from screening the film, and online platforms featuring it were restricted. Public discussion of the film in Iranian media was limited, with analysts and cultural commentators framing it as misleading propaganda designed for entertainment rather than education. Internationally, the controversy sparked debates in film circles about artistic freedom versus historical responsibility. While some argued that filmmakers are free to dramatize history for storytelling purposes, others emphasized the potential consequences when a nation's real people and events are depicted without full nuance. Scholars and critics discussed whether Argo could unintentionally reinforce misconceptions about Iran, focusing more on heroism and suspense than on the complex political and cultural factors at play during the crisis. Even in countries where the film was screened, its reception was affected by this awareness. Discussions at film festivals, panels, and universities often included commentary about the ethical challenges of portraying real historical events, especially when diplomatic tensions linger. For some, the controversy added to the film's allure. An aura of forbidden insight into a real operation shrouded in secrecy for decades. Ultimately, the bans and debates around Argo highlighted a broader challenge in cinema: how to balance thrilling storytelling with sensitivity to historical truth and cultural representation. While the film succeeded in engaging viewers worldwide, it also sparked serious conversations about the responsibility of filmmakers when handling subjects that are politically charged and deeply personal for entire nations. Argo became more than entertainment. It became a case study in how movies can influence perception, provoke reaction, and sometimes face outright rejection when their perspective conflicts with national narratives. Argo left a mark far beyond its tense plot and Hollywood accolades. The film reminded audiences worldwide that cinema could merge suspense, historical truth, and human ingenuity in a way that felt both thrilling and intellectually engaging. Its impact on culture, filmmaking, and public awareness continues to resonate years after its release. First, the film brought renewed attention to the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis. For younger generations, it became a primary reference point for understanding that complex historical event. While textbooks and documentaries provided context, Argo offered a humanized, immediate perspective, showing the fear, courage, and calculated intelligence required to survive. It sparked curiosity in audiences to learn more about what truly happened, leading to increased interest in historical analysis and archival research. People began reading memoirs, interviews, and scholarly accounts, seeking to separate fact from dramatization. In Hollywood, Argo influenced a wave of films exploring real-life operations, covert missions, and historical crises with cinematic style. Directors and producers observed how combining meticulous research, suspenseful storytelling, and careful character work could elevate a historical drama into a major box office success. It set a benchmark for pacing and tension, showing that historical events could be rendered with thriller-like intensity without sacrificing intelligence. Films after Argo often borrowed its method, building suspense not from explosions alone, but from strategic problem-solving, dialogue, and the quiet pressure of high-stakes environments. The film also impacted the perception of individuals who operate behind the scenes in history. Tony Mendez's story highlighted that heroism does not always mean public glory. Ordinary professionals, analysts, diplomats, and intelligence officers could change outcomes dramatically without ever seeking fame. The cultural fascination with this form of understated bravery became part of the broader narrative in cinema and literature, encouraging a focus on ingenuity and careful planning as forms of heroism. Argo affected diplomacy and popular awareness too. Even in countries where it was controversial, the conversations it ignited contributed to cross-cultural discussions about history, perception, and storytelling. While Iran banned the film, Its existence prompted debates on historical representation and international media responsibility. In the US and Western countries, audiences began questioning how movies influence understanding of global politics, creating a new layer of awareness about the power of narrative. Finally, the film strengthened the idea that cinema could make history feel urgent. It blurred the line between factual events and cinematic suspense, allowing audiences to feel the stakes as if they were there, living each calculated step. This humanization of history, showing emotion, fear, and hope alongside strategy and intelligence, became a hallmark for storytelling in both historical and political cinema. In short, Argo did more than entertain. It educated, inspired, and set a model for how films could bridge historical reality with gripping narrative, leaving a cultural footprint that resonates in both cinema and collective memory. Argo leaves us with a quiet but persistent question. How far can ingenuity and courage carry us when the world seems entirely against us? It is not just a tale of escape or espionage. It is a meditation on human creativity under pressure, the small choices that become life-altering, and the delicate balance between truth and illusion. As the credits roll, the viewer is left not with the relief of a simple ending, but with a lingering curiosity, the sense that history is alive, that human ingenuity can turn impossible odds into survival, and that behind every dramatic headline, there are untold stories of courage. The brilliance of Argo lies in its restraint. The film does not dramatize for the sake of spectacle. It does not insert unnecessary violence or exaggerate heroism. Every movement, every glance, every moment of silence carries weight. We watch Tony Mendez, the 6 Americans, and the supporting team operate not with loud declarations of bravery, but with careful calculation, risk assessment, and the quiet confidence that what they are doing might just work. The audience becomes part of this tense orchestration, feeling every checkpoint, every conversation, and every potential exposure, as if we were alongside them. At its core, Argo is a reminder of the power of storytelling itself. A fake story, a film within a film, becomes the literal tool for survival. It shows us that narrative, when crafted with intelligence, can alter reality. And in a world where chaos and danger are never far away, the ability to construct, believe in, and execute a story can become a form of heroism as vital as courage in battle. For viewers, the film also raises subtle questions about perspective. We are drawn into a Western lens of history, yet aware that this is one view among many. The tension between truth and interpretation is never fully resolved, leaving us reflective about how stories are told, who tells them, and why certain narratives dominate global memory. This duality adds depth, giving Argo a sophistication beyond the typical thriller. It entertains, educates, and provokes thought simultaneously. Finally, the film's emotional resonance lies in its humanization of history. It is not just the political stakes that matter. It is the people, their fears, their small victories, and the extraordinary trust placed in a plan that could easily fail. The audience is reminded that heroism can be quiet, calculated, and profoundly intelligent. Success is not always about confrontation. It can also be about cleverness, courage, and belief in an idea that seems too fragile to survive. Argo concludes not with fireworks, but with reflection. It invites viewers to remember that history is full of such quiet, astonishing feats, that sometimes survival depends not on power, but on creativity. That suspense exists not only in moments of danger, but in the patient orchestration of human will. And above all, it reminds us that the line between fiction and reality can sometimes be the very thing that saves lives. In this careful weaving of tension, strategy, and humanity, Argo secures its place not just as a cinematic thriller, but as a lasting meditation on ingenuity, courage, and the enduring power of story.